Let's talk about our problem of the day. Give it a shot. Hit pause and start it back up when you're ready. All right, so it says, what is another way to write the square root of 49 equals 7? Well, there's a bunch of different ways to write this. But the one we learned yesterday was 7 squared, which means 7 times 7 equals 49, right? Another way you could have wrote 7 times 7 equals 49. You could have drawn a big square. It has 7 blocks wide, 7 blocks tall, and 49 for the area. So any of these work. They all mean the same thing. They're all representing a square that's 7 tall, 7 wide, and has 49 squares inside of it. Mine look a little more like rectangles, but you get the idea. So this is why we call this, instead of second power, we call it 7 squared. So we're talking about a square, all right? Square root of 49 is 7. Remember, it has to be two numbers that are the same. 7 times 7 is 49. Okay, it can't be anything different. You can't have two different numbers. All right, or else you have a rectangle, then you don't have a square anymore. So we're going to learn another way to write the same thing today. So for 9, 11, 20, and our objective today is algebra squares. All right. So, we've been talking a lot about squares and square roots. We started yesterday, just like our problem today. Well, one thing I wanted to mention, the square root of 49. We've been saying it's 7. Well, there's actually another answer for this. It could also be negative 7. So we need to write them both, because negative times a negative is also a positive 49. Positive 7 times positive 7 is also 49. So they both work. The only time it doesn't work, where you have the negative, is when you actually draw the picture. I can't say for the square root of 9 in this picture that this is negative 3 long. So if you're using a picture, you can't use negatives. Any other time, you want to write down both answers, right? Positive and negative. So I think I'm going to add to this today is we're going to talk about it as in an algebra form, all right? So I'm going to write this a little bit different. I'm going to write it as x squared equals 49. Now, we already know how to do algebra equations. If I had x plus 3 equals 5, I would draw my line. I'd get the x by itself by doing the inverse operation, or the opposite. Do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. These cancel out and become nothing, and I get x equals 2. I'm do the same thing over here. My goal is to get the variable by itself, the x. So I'm going to get rid of the squared. So we have to do the inverse of squaring. Well, what we learned yesterday is the inverse of a square is a square root. So I'm going to put square root here to make that go away. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other. These cancel out, which is weird. Square and square root, just like plus and minus do, they cancel out. Just like multiply and divide, they cancel out. So all that's left on this side is x, and then the square root of 49 is 7, but also negative 7. A negative times a negative is a positive. So there's two answers, 7 or negative 7. It's not 7 times negative 7, that would give you negative 49, which is not what we have here. But so 7 times 7 works, and negative 7 times negative 7 works. So we want to start writing them both, positive and negative, all right? So let's talk about a problem that was on one of the state tests. So this was a question on one of the state tests. You had to pick the right answer. Well, everyone went and saw, square root of 49 is 7, and they picked that. And they all got it wrong. Because you actually, in the directions, it said pick all the correct answers. So you had to pick both of those to get it right. You know you can't cut the problem in half to find the square root. It's not divide by 2. You're trying to figure out what you can multiply to get it. So if I divide by 2, you get 24.5. That's not the answer. You never divide by 2 when you're finding these. So if I said, what's the square root of 100? You can't say, oh, half of that's 50. 50 times 50 is 100. It's not true. It would be 10, right? 10 times 10 is 100. Or negative 10, right? Okay, so that's it for today. Pretty basic stuff. Let's do one more. Let's do one more of these backwards, just to see if they look like backwards. 64 equals m squared. Same thing. Cut your equation in half. Get the m by itself, right? Not the 64. So what's the opposite of squared? Square root. We do it to one side, we do it to the other. These cancel out, and I get m equals, what times what is 64? Not 32, it's 8, right? So the answer is 8, or negative 8, right? Either of those are correct answers. There's a couple ways to write this. You could write m equals 8, comma, negative 8. Or you could write m equals 8, and they put a plus and a minus by it. That means positive 8 and negative 8. Okay? If you have no questions, I'll give you guys your work. And if you have questions, hit me up in the chat, or we'll talk about it in Teams meeting tomorrow. Have a good day.